And welcome back to SWBA Today. This is your host, Rico, and this is episode 2 of many. And so before we go ahead and jump into the topics for today, I want to first thank everybody in SimWorld. And I'm talking about the fans, the coaches, the players, and just everybody that supports SimWorld. We definitely got a chance to see the feedback. And because of that, got to the higher ups here at SimWorld, and they said, look, we want to continue on with this program. And so it looks like that the ink, it's still drying. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of get off the soapbox and get into the show. But I also, too, before we do that, want to say thank you to the entire SimWorld media team. I'll be thanking them at the end of the show. And so let's go ahead and look at these topics for today. And so we're going to be looking at the SWBA scoreboard. And with that, we're looking at 11 games that took place here last night and the key takeaways from that. We're also going to be looking at SWBA standing points, and that's going to be a couple points in each conference that we want to take a look at. These are some things that change actually from day to day, week to week. So we got some interesting stuff to take a look at there. And then we're going to be talking about what you can do with your M's and why you need to make sure that you get these M's in the giveaways. And so I'm going to talk about that. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at an SWBA future prospect. I think that this guy has a ton of upside. I'm super excited to see him at the SWBA level. I actually can't wait to talk about him. So let's go ahead and jump into the SWBA scoreboard. And again, we had 11 games on tap. And so we're just looking at the key takeaways from these games. And so let's start with the Dallas Mavericks and the Indiana Pacers. And so the Indiana Pacers win this game 135 to 131. And I think that the key takeaway out of this is that the Indiana Pacers have been very clutch, because right now we are seeing that they have had 3 wins in a 5-game span when they have been trailing in the final 20 seconds, and they've been able to pull it out. This is something that really hasn't been accomplished since the 2002 Toronto Raptors did it. And so that just lets you know how clutch this team has been down the stretch. You have got to give, the Pacers a lot of credit. I think that a lot of the role players really stepped up in this one. You had Naismith, he had 18 points. You also had Andrew Nembhard, who really hit the game-winning jumper there with 22. And then Benedict Mathurin is a player that I've talked about often. He had 23. And then they had Obi Toppin come off the bench. And Pascal Siakam had 29 points. He had 5 assists. He had a steal. And he had a block shot. So he defensively had a lot of presence here for the Indiana Pacers. And so, I think that that's the real key takeaway out of this. With the Dallas Mavericks, I think that, man, they've got to try to find a way to get it together. This is a club that has been injured. You can tell that Jason Kidd has been trying to figure it out. And so hopefully that is something that the Dallas Mavericks can do. And so next up, let's go ahead and jump into this next game here. You got the Houston Rockets versus the Orlando Magic. And so, look, I think if you are not a believer in the Houston Rockets, I think that maybe it's time that you start to believe, because this is their 8th straight win. And I must say, look, they had several players that were in double figures, whether it was Tari Eason, he had 16, Dylan Brooks, 15. You had Alperen Şengün, he had 22. Van Fleet had 19, and Jalen Green had 26. And then off the bench, Jabari Smith Jr. is a player that I've really liked a lot of his games, and he had 13 off the bench as well. And so, look, this is a team that seems to be just really kind of growing up in front of our eyes. I think that Jalen Green has really been kind of impressive. I love the fact that his shot selection has gotten better. And I think that for him, he's just got to figure out a way to where he's got to stay a bit more with the highs than the lows. I think that right now his game has kind of been like this, and he's trying to settle down. And so I think that what I loved in last night's game was his ability to get to the free throw line. He was 7 of 10 from there. He hit some big shots. He also got 7 rebounds. And so he had 26 points. And he led the team with the plus-minus box score with 19. And so I think that that was terrific to see from Jalen Green. And with the Orlando Magic, look, I think that they're getting healthy at the right time. They're still in the hunt. It's always good that when you see Ben Carroll go out there, he had 31 points. You see France Wagner as well. He had 20. And so this is a team that, look, it has been in the playoffs before. I think that what has really hurt the Orlando Magic this year, it's been the injuries. And so hopefully they are able to figure it out with these injuries down the stretch. They still have a chance to maybe move up here a little bit in the standings. And so next up, looking at, I think, probably the story out of the SWBA Eastern Conference, and that's going to be the Detroit Pistons. And so shout out to the comments out there talking about Cade Cunningham and talking about how he is maybe a person that you would consider as being a player that maybe is the most improved player of the year. I think that you can certainly make an argument for that. But what I'll say about this is, look, man, it is time that we start to give them a lot of credit. Cade Cunningham, maybe he's turned the corner as far as being healthy. I think that that's maybe the one thing that's kind of held him back. He had 25 points in this one. He had 12 rebounds, and he had also 11 assists. And so that is the ninth triple-double for him. And he also hit the game-winning shot in this game. And then I really love what they have with Jalen Duren. He has been a player that I have absolutely loved out of Memphis. 15 points. He was plus 17. He had 11 rebounds in this game. I mean, he's been an absolute terror inside for this team. And then you have to love what they are getting from Thompson as well. I think that him and his brother that plays for the Houston Rockets, like they have been also too, just been all over the place as slashers, just defensive irritants. And man, you love the fact that they have Tobias Harris over that they've added as a veteran. And so with the Miami Heat, look, it's been a struggle. Ever since Jimmy Butler has left, this team is trying to find it. I got to give it to Bam. I think that Bam is playing very well over there. He had 30 points. He had 8 assists and 9 rebounds. Tyler Hero trying to step up as well with the 29 points here and the 3 assists and 4 rebounds. But man, this team is just trying to find a way to get it done. And I do think that over time, Miami's going to be fine because I do like Khalil Ware, a very talented rookie, I believe, out of the University of Indiana. And I think he has a ton of upside. And now that Jimmy Butler is left, I think that he's a player that you're going to start to hear from. He had 14 points and 12 rebounds in this one. And so, this is all about the Detroit Pistons and how they continue to trend up in the Eastern Conference here. And so next up, this is going into the Western Conference now, looking at the Pelicans and the Minnesota Timberwolves here. And so the Pelicans win 119-115. And I think the real key takeaway here is this is another bad loss for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And we're going to be talking about them here in a moment when it comes down to the standing points. But look, Julius Randle, I think he's been okay since he's been there. I clearly think that the Knicks really won this trade. And I think that Ant-Man has shown that, look, he has expanded his game, shooting a lot of three-pointers, but he's gotten a lot better with that shot. He certainly is comfortable with it. I hate the fact that he settles for it, but in this particular contest, struggled to get it going. He was 5 of 19 from the field, 4 of 10 from downtown, but he went to the free throw line 17 times. So he's 15 of 17 there, had 29 points. And so, it's just they have got to find some others to step in. And then with the Pelicans, look, the Pelicans, this is a team that just needs to gut it. It's good to see that you see Zion Williamson playing here. And he had 29 in this one. He had 8 assists, 5 rebounds. I think really the key for them is just you want to see him play on the court. And so a good win for the Pelicans, a bad loss for the Timberwolves. And so next up, Spurs and Knicks. And so speaking of bad losses, this was a bad loss for the Knicks. This is a game in which the Knicks had no business losing. And I think that this is all about San Antonio and their role players. I think that is really the key out of this game. You've seen that a role player in Sandro, Mamu, that's his name, came out. He had played in 19 minutes, 13 of 14 from the field, 7 of 7 from downtown, 34 points. And so he was huge. And then with Stephon Castle, I think that he's quietly trending towards being the rookie of the year. 22 points in this one. He had 3 assists He had 3 turnovers, but still he was a +2 in the plus minus box score. I think he's really taken off. One of the things that we don't talk about with the San Antonio Spurs is that they don't have De'Aaron Fox anymore. Right now, he's out. He had to get the pinky surgery. They're without Wemby. And so, look, I like the way that this team went out and competed. They beat the Knicks pretty badly in this one, 120-105. You have to wonder, can the Knicks hold on? I mean, because you're already facing some injuries. We know how Coach Tibbs is. And then you have one of your star players out right now. You got to find ways to get these wins, especially when you're down a star. And so next up, Utah and then the Washington Wizards. And so Utah and the Wizards, this is all about the young rebuilding teams. And I think that probably what I was most impressed with is the development of some of these rookies like Cal Filipowski of Utah. I think he's starting to get a lot more minutes now coming out of Duke, and he's starting to really look good because he didn't look good there initially in the summer league and also too early on. Didn't look comfortable as a shooter, which is something that you were thinking he was going to translate into. But in last night's game, 8 of 11 from the field, 4 of 6 from downtown, 21 points, 4 rebounds. He's a name that I think you definitely want to, for sure, take a look at. And then also, too, Isaiah Collier. I think that he's playing well, 16 points. He's finally getting over the hamstring injury that he started off with earlier this year and 6 assists. And so that was good to see. And then you pair that with Keontae George, who's been spectacular, I think, for Utah. I think with him, it's going to be consistency. And then Alex Sarr for the Wizards. Look, I've liked his games. Okay, it's not been consistent, but he's shown some flashes. And this one, 22 points, 9 rebounds. And look, the thing that you love with the Wizards is he's getting a ton of playing time, and the Wizards have a long way to go. And so next up, looking at the Lakers and the Nuggets. And so the Lakers and the Nuggets, this is all about just the Lakers and their ability to just really shoot the basketball. I think that they shot lights out in this one. Luka had 21 in the first half. And then you look at just how well that they're doing without LeBron in the lineup. I think right now they are 6-4 without LeBron. And so that's pretty good. And quietly, they've moved up to 3rd in the Western Conference. And then without LeBron, this is another player that I think really he kind of goes under the radar, and it's Austin Reeves. And because Austin Reeves had a really good game in this one, but since LeBron has been out, he's averaging 27.9 points a game and also 8.3 assists a game. I mean, like Austin Reeves has really taken off. And so for all the star power that they have out there, they are getting some good contributions, from some of these role players. Jackson Hayes has had to step up because they don't necessarily have a center. And so we'll see what happens with the Lakers. Again, you're still relying on LeBron taking a huge step with this team being healthy and hopefully being able to carry things along with Luka. And so next up, the Phoenix Suns and the Chicago Bulls. Look, I think that the bottom line here is that the Bulls just don't have enough power. The Suns, man, Kevin Durant has a good one. He has 26. You have Devin Booker, who has 41 in this game as well. And so just a lot of star power. This was huge for the Phoenix Suns. They moved to 10th in the Western Conference. For the Chicago Bulls, they've actually been pretty hot for the most part. I believe they've been 5 out of their last 7 now with this loss. And they did get Josh Giddey back. Josh Giddey is pretty much a triple-double threat for them. They're going into a contract year with him coming off the bench. He had an ankle injury prior to this game, but he had 22 points, 7 assists, and 7 rebounds. And so good to see that Josh Giddey is back. The young Bulls trying to figure it out. And so with that being said, the last game of the night was the Cavaliers and the Sacramento Kings. And so with the Cavs and the Kings, the key takeaway here is that the Cavs lose 3 straight. So they've lost 3 straight at this point in time. And the Kings, they're a feisty team. And so I'm not too worried about the Cavs, but I do wonder when it comes down to winning time, are they going to be able to take care of things? And you wonder, did they put a lot in the tank to get to where they are? Because they won 16 straight games prior to this 3-game slide. And so I think that that's really probably the key takeaway out of that. And so with that being said, look, it's already been a pretty long episode, but I want to go ahead and quickly jump into these SWBA standing points and looking at a couple of those takeaways. And so starting here with the first takeaway and really into the Western Conference, I want to start with that. So when we look at teams 6, 7, 8, and then also 2, 9 right there. So you're seeing that with the Warriors, you have just a 1 game difference between all 3 of those teams. So 6, 7, and 8 for that play-in spot. And I think that the key point out of this, or the standing point for me, is going to be Draymond Green. It's going to be Steph Curry. It's going to be Jimmy Butler. I'm believing more so in them and pulling it out and actually qualifying for the playoffs and not being in a play-in situation. And the reason why I believe in the Golden State Warriors really over those 2 teams that are chasing them, like the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Los Angeles Clippers, is that with Jimmy Butler, this team is now 15-2. Okay, so they've certainly figured it out with Jimmy Butler. But more importantly, on the defensive side of the ball, they have held opponents down 12.1 less points a game. So the opponents coming in, they are averaging 12 points less. So defensively, this team has gotten a lot better. And then what you have to love about the Golden State Warriors, which is something that is probably not talked about, is they have the 13th easiest schedule. And that is something that really you have to tip your hat to the Golden State Warriors. And with the Clippers and then the Timberwolves, who are chasing them for that last spot that is going to qualify you for the playoffs, the Clippers have the 6th toughest schedule. And then you have the Timberwolves that have the 5th toughest schedule. And so because of that, my standing point is that the Golden State Warriors will qualify for the SWBA Western Conference playoffs and not have to go into the play-in situation. And so next up, my next point is I want to look at the Eastern Conference, and this is with the first 2 teams. We talked about it briefly with the Cavaliers and them sliding, but I think that the standing point here is going to be about the Boston Celtics. And so, look, I know, the Cavs, they've been in the news, and, everybody's kind of wondering, are the Cavs team for real? I'm definitely one of those teams, but I'm still all about the Boston Celtics. And I know, for the Celtics fans out there, they're probably still believing a lot here in Jason Tatum and then also to Jaylen Brown. Of course, these are stars that have led you to, the SWBA championship. And I know currently, they're dealing with some knee injuries and things like that. But I think that this team is going to get healthy. And I think that if they do get healthy, which I'm anticipating that they are, you're looking at a Boston Celtics team that flat out, they know how to get to the playoffs, because when they get to the playoffs, this is a team that has been in 6 of the last 8 SWBA finals. And so because of that, this is why I absolutely believe in what the Boston Celtics are doing. And so that is my standing point there. So they've reached the SWBA finals in the Eastern Conference 6 of the last 8 years. That's why I am betting on the Boston Celtics to do so again. And so lastly, this leads us to the last couple points here of the show, and starting with the Boston Celtics yet again. And this is why you need to go out and you need to participate. You need to make sure that you get these M's out there, because the Boston Celtics, they have officially sold or are selling for 6.1 billion M's. Right, 6.1 billion M's. That is going to get you the Boston Celtics maybe in the future. So this is why I'm just kind of making light of the situation. You go out there, you participate, you make sure that you get your M's. We always have several different opportunities in which you can go out and you can get your M's. So make sure that you're actively listening and participating in the games and the live feeds and things like that. But all jokes aside, look, going back to the Boston Celtics and just this evaluation and them getting sold this high, what does this mean ultimately for the Celtics? Well, look, you have $500 million tied up in the luxury tax, and you have 11 players that are under contract. And so, I mean, certainly they're going to be okay for right now, but keep in mind that the SWBA CBA is changing, which is the collective bargaining agreement, if you do not know about that. And so that is going to certainly change the way that you are going to, go out and structure your team. And so it's going to be tougher for them to keep, some of their role players and things like that, obviously, as they want to keep them under contract. And so that is something to think about here with this team now being sold. And so that does lead us finally here to the last point of the show. And that is going to be the SWBA future prospect. And man, I'm super excited to talk about this young man. And so, look, I got a chance to check this game out, and this was one of the things that was talked about a lot in college basketball. In fact, it might be, maybe it could win an ESPY moment as maybe one of the upsets of the year. And that was Florida State University beating the Duke Blue Devils. And so Duke is still pretty high in the rankings. And if you've been following SimWorld U like I have here, or SWU, you're seeing that is a team that is really struggling. I think that news has come out that Leonard Hamilton may actually step down here. So we'll see what happens here with that. But I wanted to go ahead and start to talk about this young man, and that is going to be Garrett Hart. And so Garrett Hart is a player that I certainly think could certainly be a future prospect in SWBA, because here's a guy. He's 6'8", 228. He's a freshman. He's averaging 16.1 points. He leads the team as far as points scored. And then as far as the rebounding is concerned, he's leading the team, not leading the team. He's actually rebounding at 5.6. And as far as the field goal percentage, 45.5% from the field. And then he's leading the team in dunks. And so here's a player that knows how to get to the rim, get the dunks and things like that. He's leading the team also too in free throw percentage at 75%. And so here's the things that I love about him as a prospect. First and foremost, his shot creation. So his shot creation is deep, and he's 6'8", and he's a rangy player that really, I think a lot of SWBA scouts are salivating over. And, I've talked to some of these scouts and talked to some of these writers and things like that cover this game pretty closely. And they're saying, like, man, they cannot wait to see what he's going to look like. We're going to talk about some of the things that he has to work on, but still, that is one of the things early that you like about him is his shot creation. Next up is his handle, right? His handle allows him to get to anywhere on the floor. And really, as that handle continues to evolve, which I think it is, look, he's going to be a player that not only can get his own shots, but he's going to be able to set up teammates. And so that suggests that the assist ratios are going to go up for him. Next up, look, I think another thing for him is, like, he's quick and he has a little bit of range defensively. I think that when you look at his length and his wingspan and his ability to just impact the game, which was saw here, on television when you got a chance to see that upset. And, I think that is another thing that you really love about him, his attitude. He's all about the team success. So that scouts are going to love that. That's something that definitely translates. And then when you look at just what all his teammates say and just really what everybody around the media is talking about, this is a guy that he will go through the wall for this team. He's a hustler. He wants everything. And I love that about him. And then you have to love that he can be a leader. And I think one of the things that really makes him a leader is his ability to communicate. And he's into broadcasting, so he's probably going to be taking probably my job here pretty soon, or some of our jobs here on the network. But that is some of the things that he's into, is broadcasting. And I think that really translates to what you're doing on the court, because he's a great communicator and he's pretty genuine about it. And so teammates really love it, especially when he becomes more vocal, which is one of the things that I wanted to get to in this particular article. And shout out to J.K. Candle here. Hopefully I said it correctly, aka JK. And look, he wrote this beautiful piece. It was a sit-down interview, so make sure you go check that out on Bleacher Report. But just really asking this young man just about his journey and just about, how he was taking, just stepping into the number one role. And what I love most about him, and one of the things that I think he probably has to continue to work on, is the intangibles. But I think in this game, he showed that he was certainly ready for the biggest spotlight out there in SWU when this game was on. And I love just his attitude about the fact that, yes, the team wasn't winning like that, or hasn't been winning, but he's still competing as if this team is winning at a high level. And so, it's tough sometimes. Some players shut it down when their team is not doing as good. But, just going into what was said in this article, and what I really take out of this at the end, when he was asked about, what would be your message to the SWBA and the coaching and things like that. And he said, look, from a player that has just stepped into now a bigger spotlight, had to take on the number one option. And just paraphrasing this, he's like, you can imagine what is going to happen when I get coached up full time. I'm able to focus solely on basketball and just really taking this role as a leader to the next level. And so you love that about him, just being a forward thinker. And I think that one of the things, or one of the reasons why he's going to get even better, is because he's going to get some familiar teammates that are coming over to Florida State University in Ty Jones. He's a player that he's, I believe, familiar with, and then also to Darius McBride. And so this is a player that I would expect to see and in the future in the SWBA, certainly when he's eligible. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking here about the show. I know that this was a pretty long one, but we got a lot of stuff that we'll be covering on these shows moving forward. And lastly, before we jump out, I just want to give a special thanks to the entire media team, just everybody out there. And so I know I'm not going to get all the names out there, but you know who you are, everybody. And I'm talking about just throwing names out there. Look, JK, Rick Blaze, Marshman, I'm trying to think, B-Ron, Worldwide B-Ron, he can't miss, Himothy, Sniper J, look, Lava, all you guys, man, every single one of you, from the broadcast team to the people in the truck, everybody out there, this could not happen if it were not for you. And so if I didn't mention your name, trust me, I'm thinking about you. Maestro, just thought about you right there. But anyway, as we always say, see the game, be the game, get off my soapbox, and get back into the content. But we'll be talking a little bit more. All right, man. Peace. I'll see you guys.